There is a contemporary deception that the white man who brought the Bible is the white man who also brought slavery and colonization. That to me is one of the unreasonable arguments anybody can ever make. At best, I said I've done history. I've done the history of Ghana. I've studied about the peopling of Ghana, Ghana's economic history. I've talked about slave trade, transatlantic trade, black diaspora, African response to colonization. I want to ask a very simple question. If you are a people teacher, you have been sent to Takwa to go and teach, and the bus you sat in to go to Takwa, there are people who are inside the bus and they are going to do galamsey. They go to Takwa to do galamsey and to destroy the water bodies. Should you also be held accountable for destroying water bodies in Takwa through galamsey because you sat in the same bus with them? It doesn't make sense. The same ship brought the missionary and brought the colonizer, but they had different mission. Actually, in this book, I have spoken about the missionaries' contribution to development in Africa, Ghana in particular. For instance, the Basel mission, which is the Presbyterian church from Switzerland, when they came to the Gold Coast, decided to set up what is called Salem communities, because among the natives there were barbaric acts like tribal marks, which was dehumanizing, female genital mutilation, all manner of things. So they set up communities where they would train people with trade, artistry, pottery, craftsmanship, baking, etc., to give them commercial scale. Those communities they created includes Kwiapem Ekropon, it includes Osu, and it includes Abokobi. They were missionary towns that were set up by missionaries to train the local people. It was the missionaries that brought education to Ghana. It was not the politicians who brought education to Ghana. The first school in Ghana, Gold Coast, is Infantsipim Secondary School. It was brought by the Wesleyan missionaries. Every school in Ghana until 1948 disturbances, the commission said that they should establish schools. All the political schools in Ghana were established after the 1948 rout, beginning with 1949. Before that time, the schools were built by the Christians with tithe and offerings from Christian nations. They came sleeping in coffins to come and preach the gospel to us so that you and myself will have Western education. So why will anybody blame white people, white missionaries, for the dehumanizing act of slavery? Actually, it was the Christians who stood for the abolition of the slave trade. Colonization did not have any relationship with Christians. The bond of 1844 was signed by the Fanti chiefs and Commander Hill. It was an agreement that was signed to give the coastal portions of the coastal states to the white people to protect their monopoly of trade, so that people in the middle and northern part of Ghana and elsewhere who were seeking to have direct trade route or direct trading access to the colonizers at the coastal states, they will protect them and protect their interests. So they became British protectorate, protecting their interest of trade. That agreement that was signed by Commander Hill and the Fantis, there was no church member there. There was no Christian missionary there. It was Commander Hill, who was the British colonial power, and the Fanti chiefs, Kojo Tibuo and all of them, they were like 8 or so, who sat down to write the bond of 1844. That was the formal agreement that gave Ghana to the white people to rule us and colonize us. It was not signed by missionaries. It was signed by politicians. And by the way, on the flip side, before the white people came to the Gold Coast, what were we doing? I think that should also be mentioned. Now, in African traditional religion, there is no reviews of belief. So how come that now people don't do human sacrifice again? It is not because it is no more something that African traditional religion believes. The impact of Christianity is what has modified African society. In those days, when a king died, they killed his wife and other people to follow him to go to the other world, to go and serve him. That was what we were doing here. If they accuse missionaries for colonization, I think it should be put in proper persona. By the way, the white people were not snatching slaves. There was something called panyaring, where people go to war and seize slaves and sell to the white people. It was the black people who were selling themselves to the white people. That should rather be mentioned. Christianity took away barbarity or barbarism, anachronism, evil things that were in our society. It is the impact of Christianity that took it away. In Africa, we are practicing what is called nudity. It is the influence of Christianity that the body of man is the glory of God and should be covered. That is why when you check most of the missionaries and evangelicals, they preach a lot about dressing. It was the influence of early Christianity, because when they came here, everybody was naked and it was something they had no plans to change. So they had to impose civility on us by telling us to dress and cover our nakedness. And has become a culture and a norm. In fact, it was so strong that the Church of Pentecost and Damakion had to adopt a dressing style for every priest to encourage people to dress. That a priest must wear suit and a tie before he can preach. That is why a lot of pastors wear suit. It was a culture that was passed on to us because the culture that existed then didn't like wearing clothes. Check African society before Christianity, before you criticize Christianity. Almost every scholar of colonial times became a scholar by missionaries. Missionaries with their tithe and offerings. They came here, took our people to school. Colonizers didn't do that. Kwame Nkrumah was in Achimota school when he was taken abroad. And he went actually as a Christian. He read two scholars, W.E.B. Du Bois and Marcus Garvey, and he became a Garveyite. And that is when he started speaking against God and the worship of God. But he went abroad with tithes and offerings. What am I saying? What I'm saying is that the Bible is not the work of man. It was God that has brought his mind to us. If you read it, it will change your life. Just as African societies embrace it and change their societies.